May 8th, 2024. 66 years and 1 day after Chodoan, Nyogen Senzaki transformed himself into this profound silence that we share here in his name, in the memory of this human being who was instrumental in the transmission of Rinzai Zen onto this new continent, North America. Senzaki. Thousand capes, cape in the sense of a protruding part of the land that goes into the ocean. Senzaki is the family name. And he was born in 1876. And it's, of course, in 1876, record keeping in Japan was really not that great, because just the Meiji Restoration had happened. A new kind of way of doing everything was there. The role that the temples played in the past had been changed, and the state was moving back towards the direction of the native Japanese creed or religion, whatever you want to call it, of Shinto. Shinto, the religion of a pantheon of different kamis, deities. Japan, the islands born from the spear of Izanagi and Izanami touching the ocean, long time ago. Many, many stories about emperors in the past. Jimmu Tenno. In the Kojiki, the tales from the old times. Jimmu Tenno was the one who brought peace to the islands of Japan. There were many, many warfaring clans, kind of now here in America. Clans really fighting there to the death. And it was a very difficult time. And Jimmu Tenno, he united this place in peace. Does anyone know how? He invited all the leaders of the clan to a big banquet. And they ate and they drank. And they were all happy to the degree that at the time when Jimmu Tenno's people came and beheaded all of them, they were quite content with it. That's one way of making peace. So this kind of, there's some ferocity to it, but there's also some real dependency and some very close relationship with nature in this Shinto way of approaching life. So some say that on October 5th, 1876, the Senzaki family's first son was born. And the given name was Aizo, Senzaki Aizo. And that was in the Aomori prefecture. If you know a little bit about the geography of Japan, you know there's the most northern island, which is Hokkaido. Then is the main island, Honshu. And the most northern part on the other side of the strait between Hokkaido and Honshu is Aomori. So different stories were told to the kid For example, his grandmother told him that he had been abandoned when he was an infant, and that he was discovered by a fisherman on Sakhalin Island. So if you go further north from Hokkaido, there's the big island Sakhalin, which is claimed by Russia, and of course that's one of the reasons that there was a Russo-Japanese war. So that's where he supposedly was found, according to the grandmother. But who knows if it's true? The father is unknown, but was probably Russian or Chinese. If you look at the picture of Nyogen Senzaki, you can see some character traits from various places in East Asia. So maybe the grandmother didn't know what she told the kid, or she was misinformed. But there are also some other accounts that state that the young Aizo was adopted by a traveling Kegon Buddhist priest and brought back to Japan. So just means his childhood was not a childhood that was protected. There was abandonment. And if that were not enough, at the age of 5, his mother passed away. His mother died, and so he was sent to his grandfather, who ran a Pure Land temple, Pure Land Buddhism. Jodoshu came to Japan by the famous monk Kukai. Kukai, Kobo Daishi. And it is the Nenbutsu tradition, where you repeat the Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. And to many people it seems like just another religious practice, but it is not unlike what we at times do when we do Zazen. Mo, mo, or who am I, who am I, who am I, who am I, what is this, what is this, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Ave Maria, Grazia Plena, it's all the same. Just falling straight into this giving oneself to the very moment. Just that. So with his grandfather, he began to study many of the Chinese classics. Confucius. And his grandfather had a really, really profound influence on him. And Nyogen Senzaki later wrote, to live up to the Buddhist ideals outside of name and fame, and to avoid as far as possible the world of loss and gain. That is what his grandfather taught him. When he turned 16, his grandfather died. So let's do a little math here. 1876, 16 years later, is 1892. His grandfather died. And just before he died, he said to his grandson Aizo, even though you have told me that you want to become a monk, when I look at the way how the teachings of Buddhism are now in Japan, I am afraid you may regret it. So think it over. Taking the advice of his grandfather, Aizo did not go and join another temple or became a monk. He went to a prep school to prepare himself to enter medical school. He read all kinds of stuff, including the autobiography of Ben Franklin. And he tried to act like Franklin acted in terms of spirituality. It's quite an interesting influence that he had there. He was drawn to Christianity at times, following still the advice of his grandfather that, well, Buddhism isn't that great anymore in Japan. But when he discovered the poetry of Basho, Matsuo Basho, the Zen priest who wrote wonderful haiku, he came back to Buddhism and he read the entirety of the Tripitaka, the whole thing, before age 18. That was the turning point for him, and he decided to become a Zen Buddhist monk. On April 8th, 1895, which of course is the Buddha's birthday, it is Hana Matsuri, the Feast of Flowers that we just had here during Holy Day Sesshin. He was ordained as a monk. When you go and look at the showcase, is it a showcase?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the price is right.
The price is right?
Did you see that? They have showcases there.
Yeah, but I mean the one with the glass that you made.
Yeah, it's just a display cabinet.
In the display cabinet, just outside of the Doksan room, that price is certainly right because it is immeasurable what you can see there. You can see pictures of Nyogen Senzaki. You can see his rakusu, that is the very one he is wearing in this picture. It is displayed in that display case. And one thing that I just borrowed from there is this nyoi, this scepter. This is the scepter that Nyogen Senzaki used with his Sangha. Wow. I think you should all touch it. Please, just. So we have all these wonderful things, and that just because he wanted to become a monk, and he actually became a monk in the Soto tradition. So when you look at that rakusu, in the back of it, there's this flap that we have in the back. Teisho, can you show yours just quickly? Yeah, when you look at that flap, there is a triangle there. And the triangle on that flap means that this is a Rinzai school. But the rakusu that the Soto school uses has pine needles sewn there. It looks like pine needles. It's a few lines of thread that indicate the pine needles, and it's usually green. So he was actually ordained as a Soto monk. He said he would have preferred to be ordained at the Rinzai temple, but there was no Rinzai temple around. And that's already a very nice indication of the direction that we find Nyogen Senzaki going into. Not traditional or not bound by tradition at all. You have touched it many times because you put it in the case. Nyogen Senzaki, silently with us. So I'm not going to go over his whole life with you. if you want to read about his life, you can find the books that we have in the bookstore about Nyogen Senzaki. But to make it shorter, the next step is he studied with various, he went to Kamakura, actually, where he met his master. We always say Soen Shaku here. Soen Shaku, because that's the American way. But in Japan, everybody knows him as Shaku Soen. Yeah, Shaku Soen. The first Rinzai master who came to the United States in 1893 to be at the World Fair, where they had this Congress of the World's Religions. And he went there, and he was accompanied by a translator who was a lay student of his. Anyone remember who it is?
Suzuki.
It was D.T. Suzuki, Daisetsu Teitaru, so Suzuki Daisetsu. And that was in 1893. It was very interesting if you read about the Congress, because there were also Indian philosophers and Hindu teachers there. And you had this juxtaposition of a Japanese master speaking in Japanese and then having it translated into English, to these Indian teachers just standing there and being able to freely elucidate everything in English. So it's actually around that time, the 1890s, that the Vedanta schools that we find of the Indian teachings made it into the United States, and they started flourishing right away. For Zen, it took a long time. So in 1905, Shaku Soen, or Soen Shaku, was asked to come back to the United States to teach and to give lectures. And he asked his monk, Nyogen, to come with him. So that's how Nyogen Senzaki came to the United States. First, they landed in Seattle, Washington. They stayed there for a few days, and then they headed for San Francisco. And somehow, Senzaki Sensei must have felt that this new land here was thirsty and ready for someone like him. Because when they were going to go back, Shaku Soen felt that his student was in turmoil about it. Should I return to Japan that has become so nationalistic? Or should I stay here in the United States that is a land that is open to new things? And on the way back, Soen Shaku sensed this turmoil at the prospect of returning to an outdated way, a curtailed way of practice, frankly, because the government was nationalistic and not for Buddhism. Or should he stay? So in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, the teacher Shaku Soen put down Nyogen's suitcase and looked at him and said to him, "Just face the great city and see whether it conquers you or you conquer it. Do not feel obliged to serve me any longer." And that was the last time they met. 53 years later, Nyogen Senzaki died, still deeply indebted and deeply dedicated to his teacher's memory. Soen Shaku didn't live that long. He died in 1919. One of his successors came back to America and brought with him another successor, Sasaki Shigetsu, who moved into New York and founded the first Zen Institute of America, which is, I think, on 30th Avenue, something in that area. Sasaki Shigetsu goes also back to that same lineage. So, but here we had Nyogen Senzaki really not knowing what to do, barely speaking English, going to the public library to read and to learn English, working as an elevator assistant at a desk at a hotel, carrying suitcases. I think he even rented himself out. He learned ballroom dancing and was available to be rented to dance with people. That is not what a traditional Zen monk usually does. But that's not what it was about. Becoming free from the fetters and from the restrictions of many of the things the government had imposed in Japan, but also, frankly, that come with some of these traditions. So he founded a Zendo, just barely being able to rent a room here and there to bring people together. In 1990, he learned that his teacher had died, and so it was his time to offer what he had learned. He founded this floating Zendo, going from this hall to that hall, still in Northern California. But then in the 30s, he moved to Los Angeles, the city of the angels, the Angelinos. He brought the floating Zendo with him. We know, if you read the book, you will find out about Tanahashi Shubin, the woman who had a laundry business, who offered him to stay in her house and him taking care of their handicapped son, Jimmy. Jimmy Seigando, because Jimmy, even though he was handicapped, one thing he could recite: Shujo Muan Seigando, the 4 great vows. Here he was in America, having arrived as seeing it as an open plain, fertile ground for Buddhism. And it was not changed, even though Executive Order 9066 was signed after December 6th, when Pearl Harbor was bombed and Japanese-born and Japanese descendants were interned in camps. Senzaki Sensei spent time in Wyoming at Heart Mountain, a barren wilderness. Many interesting stories from there that you can read in the books. But now let me just speak a little bit to what was different with him. Let me read to you what he wrote about himself. My ideal life is to become one useless mushroom with no attractive flowers or bothersome stems or leaves. When you start liking me too much, I will disappear from you. I am not like some priests who send out reports to the main temples and to fellow workers and advertise how splendidly they are doing. In fact, I have no great temple I belong to. This little group is my own temple, and I'm quite contented with it. I have no fellow workers, because non-work is the work of Zen. Most of the so-called religious workers are working for propaganda purposes, not for true teaching. I want them to count me out from their groups. A professor of the University of Theosophy always invites me to attend his lectures when he comes to the city. He probably thinks this mushroom has plenty of time to waste. A woman who devotes herself to worldly peace movement asked me to work for her. If a person cooperates with all the movements of which they approve, how can they do this their own work? This useless mushroom wants to be left alone. It is busy with its own task, minute after minute. What an apt choice to call himself a mushroom. Unattractive. No flowers, no adornment. Growing in damp and dark places. Mushrooms. But now, as we know through modern science, the part of the mushroom we don't see, the mycelium that grows underground for huge amounts of distance. So the picture of us and Nyogen Senzaki emerging from this underground network of connections, from this Indra's net in which each diamond reflects all the other diamonds in it, is that underlying non-dual Buddha nature to which we return in Zazen, to which we make full relationship when all self-referential thought, action, or even conditions disappear. We see just the little mushroom on the top. And he even thought there are really no stems and no leaves. But barely any other organism has as many spores than a mushroom, that unseen, invisibly are carried around. And I suppose here we are, spores grown up to mushrooms of their own. Here's something else that Nyogen Senzaki wrote. He wrote to his Zendo practitioners. He always called them bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas. And this is already in Los Angeles in 1933. In the beginning, this place was selected by some Japanese Buddhist friends as a shelter for Buddhist monks. My ideal as a Buddhist monk is to have no permanent place to stay, but to take a course of pilgrimage as a lone cloud floating freely in the blue sky. Even though I have been staying in this place 2 years and 5 months, I have always considered myself a pilgrim on a journey, making each a day a transient stay. As it is a transient stay, I do not worry about tomorrow. It is today. It is today I am living with gratitude. What can my regret do with the happenings of yesterday? If I have to go away on a long trip, some other monk or monks may stay in this shelter transiently, the same as I, as long as this principle of anicca, impermanence, mujo, the principle of impermanence is practiced, This shelter will remain a Buddhist house. In fact, I am passing away every day. What you saw about me yesterday, you cannot see anymore. Tomorrow you will meet a man who looks like Senzaki. But he is not the Senzaki you met today. As long as you dwell in the understanding of anatta, the principle of non-individuality, no self, muga, our relation will be of a Buddhist nature. Apply all of this to yourself, to this place. We are here transient. We come, we leave. We find a home every time we sit down in Zazen more and more. We develop the ability to enter that samadhi of being truly at home and to then freely leave our home when the time comes. Very conveniently provided here by the bell ringing. In our lives, it might be a little harder to find the time. When is it time to leave? When is it time to move on in this journey of ours? Senzaki continues. If any of you have a desire to move our meditation hall to another location to increase your comfort and pleasure, you're clinging to delusions which are not Buddhist at all. True Buddhists never proselytize. I did not ask you to come to this place. Your own Buddha nature guided you here. If a new location and a better house would attract more people, what would be the use of them if we had no Buddhist spirit within ourselves? Why is this monastery literally at the end of the road, in the middle of nowhere? How many of us have been brought here? Not one. We all came here ourselves, not for the comfort. Nyogen continues. Some may say they are satisfied with this place and this house, but for the sake of strangers, we must make it more attractive. This world is nothing but the phenomena of dissatisfaction. Wherever one goes, one must face some sort of suffering. This is the principle of dukkha, the principle of suffering which Buddha repeatedly stressed. Those who come for comfort and pleasure will never be satisfied in a Buddhist house. They have not belonged here from the beginning, so why should we try to attract them? This house is a shelter for Buddhist monks, and you, our honorable guests, should feel obliged to follow its principles. If you wish to meditate, I will join you in meditation. If you wish to study scripture, I will join you, assist your learning. If you wish to take your vows to keep the precepts, I will ordain you as monks, nuns, upasakas or upasikas, those are lay practitioners, and will endeavor to live the Buddhist life with you. If you wish to donate material or immaterial things, the monks will receive them in the name of the dana paramita, the paramita of giving, or as it's often translated in the Diamond Sutra, charity. You need not worry how and where your seeds of charity are planted. Just give and forget. This is the way to maintain the Sangha, the group of practical Buddhists. Very, very hands-on advice. Sometimes we get donations offered. And we know a lot about the person giving when the donation comes with the request of having this or that string attached. I don't know if it's a good way, would be a good way for our fundraising to say, just give and forget. Maybe we should try that. It's a nice quote. Maybe that goes into the next fundraising letter. Follow what Nyogen Senzaki said. Just give and forget. And then we'll follow it up and say, just give more and forget more. That is the true dana. Nyogen says, no guests of this Buddhist house should worry about spreading the teaching or maintaining the movement. Their time should be utilized in meditation, learning the scriptures and practicing while they are learning it in their own world. This is the true spirit by which the teaching of the Buddha will remain among mankind in its proper form. So, there are 5,000 books on Buddhism in European languages. That was 1933. I'm sure there are 500,000 books in Western languages about Buddhism by now. While I was looking at this, I encountered a book that I really found stunning. It's called White Collar Zen. And it lays out an approach how to solve business problems following the koan approach. And it goes, first mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers, and then come the business problems that are listed. Then it goes to mountains are no longer mountains and rivers are no longer rivers, and a different set of business problems is listed. And the last is, of course, mountains are mountains again and rivers are rivers again. It's called White Collar Zen. Maybe we should read it. That's one of the 500,000 books. But what he says ultimately is, I could give you a very long discourse, but until you are ready to enter samadhi, the more you hear about the theories and speculations, the more you will carry the unnecessary burdens upon your shoulders. I wish all of you to come practice the true Buddhism, following the discipline of Zen monks and forgetting your own self-limited worldly opinions. And that's what we are doing here. We are honoring this example of Nyogen Senzaki by tilling the ground right where our feet touch it, by turning over the field of our own consciousness, of our predilections, of our dislikes, of our identities, and not reenacting anything, but creatively arising out of every moment in this practice. It takes some time to actually see through the formality, the chanting, the bowing, the sitting still, All of it seems very rigid in the beginning. But over time, when it becomes the expression of the most inner of our beings, the most inner heart of our own nature as an expression, it's just about the most wonderful thing. And then when we go out in the world, we have learned how to make that inner being, that no self, shine through all what previously might have been seen in a different category. Worldly affairs, work, relationships, whatever, politics. Once it is illuminated from that inside, from that fire that is kindled through this practice, that then rampantly burns like a fire in dry grass and cleans out old growth wherever it can get. We have honored the mushroom monk and created the fertile ground out of the ashes in which the spores of Zen Buddhism, or whatever you want to call it, an awakened, open-hearted, no self-manifesting human being. And that's why we commemorate Nyogen Senzaki with this session.